That time I got reincarnated as a true dragon by NautyManu. Chapter 90. Training Milam 2 inches. Not bad Milam, you managed to last for a half an hour on your first day. Rimuru commented as she said with a chuckle. If she was being honest, she was enjoying this a bit too much. Well, you can't blame her, as Milam once did the same thing to her too in the past. It was when Rimuru had still not ascended as a true demon lord, was a demon lord seed. If she remembered correctly, Milam had just arrived at Tempest. One day Rimuru was doing her training with Hikuro and the rest when Milam suddenly barged in and said that she wanted to train her. According to her, what Rimuru lacked is combat experience. Rimuru at that time thought it was a good idea and agreed to Milam's proposal. Oh boy, did she regret it. As soon as they arrived at the special training ground, Milam started to attack Rimuru like crazy. At that time Rimuru barely managed to dodge her attacks even when she was going easy on him. But even then Rimuru was injured during every attack with the wind pressure alone. If he remembered correctly, he managed to last about an hour or two before his regeneration was stopped due to the insufficient magicules. She could still remember Milam's words at that time. Ha ha ha, Rimuru, you were great. You actually managed to last this long on your first day. As expected, I am a great teacher. Rimuru felt much greater damage from her words than the whole fight. Call her petty, but she always wanted to say those words back to Milam again. It's just that she didn't have an opportunity to do that. Auntie is bullying me. Milam's angry voice broke Rimuru from her thoughts. Looking at Milam, she saw Milam had tears on her eyes. Normally one would try very hard to calm her down, as nobody wanted to bear the moniker of child bully. But Rimuru, who practically raised Milam by herself, knew Milam is just faking it like she always does. So she said, well, it seems you are too weak to endure this level of training. It seems like we have to tough you up by cutting your sweet intake by half. We can't have you cry like this every day after all. Milam, who was crying, suddenly stopped and said hurriedly, no, you don't have to do that. This training is just right for me. Oh, but what about the tears on your eyes? As your aunt, I can't let my niece cry like this every time you train. Rimuru said with an amused smile. Crying? Who said I am crying? I just got some dust in my eyes, so that's why it looked like I was crying. Milam hurriedly said. She didn't dare to gamble with her sweets on the line. Well, if you say so, Rimuru said as she tried her best to stifle her laughter. Like Veldanava, Milam always has some interesting excuses. Seeing Rimuru agreeing with her, Milam breathed a sigh of relief. That was close. I almost lost half of my sweets, she thought as she wiped the sweat from her forehead. Milam, the first lesson I would be teaching is how to handle your stellar mana. While you may have not known this, stellar mana is one of the most destructive magicules there is in this world. And you can infinitely regenerate stellar mana with your intrinsic skill magicule breeder reactor. So this is the best advantage you have over anyone else. Rimuru said to Milam. So does that I have this golden finger cheat that all those protagonists talk about in manga? Milam asked excitedly. She liked to read manga from the isekai genre. Rimuru paused as she thought about it. Specifically speaking, Milam's stellar mana and intrinsic skill is inherited from Veldanava. And since Veldanava is considered a god here, what she said is not wrong. That is negative. Milam's intrinsic skill and stellar mana cannot be considered a cheat. Although stellar mana could be deadly, it isn't all-powerful. Stronger beings like Guy and Rudra can suppress stellar mana with their battle aura. Unless Milam gains her ultimate skill Lord of Wrath Satanel, she cannot fully utilize the destructiveness of stellar mana, much less her own potential. Seal said telepathically as she adjusted her imaginary glasses while being inside Rimuru. So in the end, it still comes down to her getting that ultimate skill, huh? Rimuru said internally. What Seal said was logical. Stellar mana can be suppressed by stronger beings. Veldanava was an exception, as he had millions if not billions of years to refine his control over stellar mana. And as Seal said, for Milam to fully display her potential, she needs an ultimate skill like Satanel. But despite having these thoughts, Rimuru said to Milam, whether your skills or your golden spoon is yet to be decided. Remember, every skill, no matter how weak it may sound, can be powerful depending on the situation. Remember, what defines how strong skills are our capabilities on utilizing them. I understand, Auntie Rimuru, Milam said seriously. She read too many novels to make such a beginner-level mistake. If those protagonists can be the world's strongest by using their weak skills, so can she. Good, let me help show you a way to refine your control, Rimuru said as she began to instruct Milim on how to refine her stellar mana. The denser she could make it, the better. Like this, 2 hours went by, and by that time Milim was sweating furiously. Her mind was very tired with the training she did. Thankfully she didn't have to do any physical exercises today, or else she would have collapsed from exhaustion. Okay, that's for today. You can take a break during the day, or you could challenge some demons who come here to get some more combat experience. But remember, if you are fighting, do it in the arena. Don't think of sneaking out to play, Rimuru warned her with a serious tone. She didn't want Milim to go outside and bite more than she could chew. After all, in the underworld, high-ranking demons rarely stay alone. If they decided to gang up on Milim, even she would be overwhelmed. The lack of combat experience is a sin in the underworld after all. The older they're, the stronger they become. Okay, I will not go outside, I promise, Milim said, agreeing to Rimuru's words. Whether how long this promise would last would depend on how bored Milim would get in the upcoming days. Chapter 91. Star-breathing. Milim's training continued for the next 2 months. During these months her control over stellar mana improved significantly. Seeing her improvement, even Velgaia, who didn't have much interest in training, began to join her. As the last creation of Veldanaba, it too had the ability to handle stellar mana to a certain degree. But unlike Milim, who had significant progress, its progress was quite slow. Well, this was expected, as it didn't have an infinite amount of energy like Milim to practice all day. But just when Velgaia was losing hope, Veldora came to the rescue. Yes, Veldora, despite being an idiot, is a great teacher. He trained Zijin into a fine warrior by teaching him his own created martial arts. His mystery over battle aura is second to none. And this time Veldora had millions of years to hone his abilities even more. So when he volunteered to train Velgaia, nor Rimuru or Seal disagreed. A dragon is the best training partner for another dragon. And under Veldora's tutelage, Velgaia began to get stronger at a visible speed. Despite being unable to transform into a humanoid form, Velgaia managed to master battle aura. With the added buff from stellar mana, it began to display some fearsome talent in fighting close quarters. Today, like the usual, Milim and Velgaia were doing their respective training. Rimuru suddenly announced, "Okay Milim, your control over your stellar mana is decent enough for now. Today I will teach you something else." Hearing her words, Milim's eyes began to shine with intense curiosity and excitement. Frankly, she was getting pretty bored after doing the same training for 2 months. "Oh, tell me, she said excitedly as jumped around like a kid. Rimuru looked at her with a smile and said, "Well, now don't get too excited. What I am going to teach you is swordsmanship. Specifically speaking, this is the sword style your father created." "My father," Milim mumbled. To her, her parents are a mystery. Whenever she asked about them, everyone would look away or try to change the subject. Hell, she wouldn't even know about having any parents if Rimuru didn't mention it on her 10th birthday. Although she didn't say much, she did reveal some basic information about her parents. Her father's name is Veldanaba, and he is the elder brother of Aunt Rimuru. While her mother's name is Lucia, and her elder brother is Uncle Rudra, which makes her a princess. And apart from some rare times, Aunt Rimuru never mentioned them again. So imagine her surprise when Aunt Rimuru gave her this golden opportunity to find more about her parents. "Aunt Rimuru was my father, a skilled swordsman?" Milim asked with a bit of expectation. Her first guess was that he might be a knight. In all the stories she read, only a knight had the chance to marry a princess. Rimuru chuckled as she said with a bit of nostalgia, "Yes, he was a very skilled swordsman. In fact, he was the one who taught your Uncle Rudra how to wield a blade. He was the only person who managed to contest with me with just pure swordsmanship. The swordsman style he invented is called the star-breathing." Hearing the name, Milim instantly wanted to ask a very important question, but before she could do so, Rimuru said, "Yes, the name was something he copied after reading the Demon Slayer manga." "That's so cool," Milim said with excitement. She was about to learn a real breathing technique. Maybe she could become a Hashira after she masters this technique. Although Rimuru couldn't read minds. That's BS, and you know it. She had been with Milim for a long time to know how her mind works. With a resigned sigh, she thought, "Well, I just hope she doesn't go around finding demons to slay when she finally manages to go to the Cardinal World." Months went by in a blink of an eye. Milim, under the guidance of Rimuru, slowly began to master star breathing. Even though this sword style was tailor-made for Milim, she had some difficulty mastering it. Because to truly manifest the deadliness of star release you would need to combine both stellar mana and battle aura in a ratio that will change each move. For example, if you are using a move that is used for defense, you must increase the ratio of the battle aura amount. And when you are on the defense, it is the stellar mana amount that should be increased, as with its destructive properties could be very deadly. To do all this one must need some good instincts or have the ability to do the necessary calculations each time. Unfortunately, Milim belongs to the former, and unlike Veldanaba, who had millions of years of experience, she had to start from the very basics. So it is safe to say that there were numerous explosions every few minutes. Had it not for Rimuru enhancing the protections Milim had, she might have had some serious injuries that even her tough defense and regeneration couldn't fix. It was only after 2 years did she manage to barely use the star breathing without blowing herself. And it was then did Rimuru began to teach her how to properly use a sword. Previously Milim only did some basic stances. But don't misunderstand, the hardest part of stellar breathing is switching from offense to defense in a swift moment. The other moves are just some you would have to do to protect yourself. And even that is different depending on the situation. For example, the moves you need to block a strike that is coming from below and the moves you use when blocking a strike from the chest are completely different. But these two moves still carry the essence of defense. So no matter what cool moves you know, if you couldn't bring the suitable essence in your stance, you might as well fail as a stellar breathing swordsman. As they say, the basics are what matters most. If one couldn't master the basics correctly, then they have no opportunity to advance further.